is this? How do we get entangled in dysfunction? Like, how do we do that? How does that happen? Well, it happens in a lot of different ways. Um, ah, Gosh, how do you make this quick? That's the big problem. But let me tell you the main way it happens. Generally, we have some dynamic that we're walking around with that's part of our makeup, and every human has these, that makes us vulnerable. We have to have a vulnerability. It's like any other illness, it's like an immune system. And sometimes, if there's a vulnerability in the immune system, people can, catch the same thing and have, you know, well, let's go back. They could be exposed to the same thing and get it or not get it, but also catch the same thing and have, different go rounds with it, depending on how strong our immune response is and how strong the system is to fight it off. You've all heard of somebody, a friend or somebody being in the hospital where they said, we want to give them this antibiotic or whatever, but we got to strengthen their certain levels first before they can, take that. And so we're walking around with these vulnerabilities. I'll give you a few examples. Um, you might have kind of an emptiness inside, kind of a lack of love, where love ought to be inside of you, put in by somebody, by some bodies over the course of life. This can start early in childhood, where people don't have a really secure attachment and there's a need. And one of the things need does is it can need sometimes there's an overlay to need with idealization, that if we're hungry, have you ever noticed this? When you're really, really hungry, like everything looks good, right? Stuff you would not normally, want to eat. Oh, just give me that, that kale. Even kale looks good if I'm really, really hungry. But our needs sometimes can cause us to, like, not be very picky. And not worse than that, it can cause like the the first option that comes along to look really, really good. This is how sometimes really abused kids and kids who have not been loved get lured in to hurtful things, really hurtful things. Sometimes, for example, maybe somebody has put a really critical voice in your head. I was reading some research this morning on what angry parenting does. I was reading some studies about when parents get angry at their kids, it it literally changes their brains. It changes their emotional functioning. It has long-term effects in those areas. There are physical ramifications. There are learning ramifications. See, those angry voices, stay, they get internalized, right? And so now, long after that, you're walking through life and somebody comes along in either direction. Maybe they're really, really nurturing, but you don't see all of the bad aspects of who they are. And it kind of like is medicine on that critical voice. They idealize you and you think you're wonderful. I've heard so many stories of women getting pulled in by somebody who's obsessive, like they're, he treated me so, like I was so special, like I was so wonderful and all this. And that idealization, they get sucked in. Well, they don't see things that are apparent about the narcissism and the selfishness and et cetera, that's in there, and the subtle, control and gaslighting and all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of times, or maybe we have a people pleasing need. Well, what kind of people need to be pleased all the time? Control freaks or narcissistic people or whatever. why do codependents always find themselves with addicts? It's a vulnerability and it just works. It fits. Now, don't send me angry emails telling me I'm blaming the victim. I am not blaming the victim. Okay, I'm not. I'm not. Okay, I work with victims and have for years and years and years. But when you talk about moving out of getting, victimized into relationship dysfunction, it also has to include a strengthening of the skills that will keep you from getting taken advantage of when those kind of people come along. That's why, for example, learning about boundaries, learning to set limits, learning to see gaslighting, learning to see control, learning to see all of this stuff, spot it, is so important because there are mean people out there and there are people that will use you. And so what we have to do is we have to develop our immunities and we have to develop better eyes, our people picker on boundaries.me. I have so many courses about this, how to spot safe and unsafe people, how to heal your people picker, how to get strong underneath that, how to set limits, all this kind of stuff. These are skill building things we need to do. So many times, when somebody has been legitimately victimized, okay, I'm not saying that you cause any of this stuff. What did I say? They had angry parenting, or they were abused, or they were unloved, or whatever. It just starts a cycle. It just starts a cycle. And interrupting that cycle is about getting healthy and increasing and building skills. And that's what I love to see when people, I'll never forget this woman. One of my favorite moments, I was doing a group in a hospital, and we're right in the middle of the group. This lady stands up and she says, "I get it. From now on, from this day forward, I am not going to allow my mother to control my life. And I'm 68 years old." And everybody just started cheering. She said, "From this day forward." She said, "Wake up." See, that's good. Let's get, we can't make all the control freaks and the non-connectors and all that stuff out there go away. But what we can do is we can up our skills to not get taken in. I'll give you one quick example and then we'll go to the phones. I see this a lot in the investment world. People that aren't sophisticated investors, people come along and offer them all of this stuff, insurance programs that, promise this and give you all this, or timeshares, or this incredible lease deal on a new car, or, and people go, "This is such a good deal," and then they'll talk. But anybody who's been around the block knows that's not a good deal. Okay, see, that's what we're talking about, is learning to spot in your world and not get hooked by stuff that might look good and it pulls on something inside, but it's not good. I've got a friend who has just written her first book and she's getting it published, in the process of getting it published. And she sent me this letter or this email. She's so excited. This publisher has offered her this incredible deal and all this and promised all this stuff. And I said, first of all, I said, stop. Do not talk to a publisher. Okay. Find a representative who talks to 1,000 publishers every day. That's called an agent. And let the agent represent you because they know what to look for in a deal and what not to. But send me the deal. She sent it to me. And I almost want to crawl through the airways to find her. Don't sign this. It was so bad, and they had just made her believe stuff. I just and it looked so good, and it was a very established, well-known group. So that's what we're saying here. Let's up our skills. Let's up our skills. Okay. Decrease our vulnerabilities. Then you'll learn what David says in one of my favorite passages. I was reading it this morning, just happenstance of coincidence as I go through on my own personal quiet times. I have a regimen that I do. And just this morning, I was in Psalm 101, and he just lists all the stuff that he won't put up with in people. And then he lists the kind of people that he will get close to. That's what I want for you.